Hi everyone, this is Tommy from Studio Ultra Mega with another Operation Battle Ready tutorial, episode 24, Winter Camo. In honor of the release of Corvus Belli's Operation Cold Front for Infinity, today we're going to cover how to get a really sharp-looking winter camo scheme on your winter troopers. This is going to be more of a traditional winter camo scheme for woods than anything super modern, so it should work for most of your military style games. This first color we're laying down is pure Ardennes green from Scalecolor. And we're taking a diagonal approach to it, because if you were to go totally vertical, like you'll sometimes see this pattern of camo, it ends up looking more like stripes, like a really bad pinstripe suit. So we're going to take a kind of a diagonal pattern to these rough tree shapes, and really all we're doing here is kind of freehanding it in, and it's just kind of a dabbing motion to create these organic, kind of messy shapes. For doing this kind of freehand work, I mean, it's not difficult because it's real loose and you kind of can't do it wrong. But you want to have a really nice fine point. Right there I've got my broken toed size 1 brush, and you'll want to make sure that your thinned out paints are thoroughly mixed, because you really can't afford to have any little pockets of water or anything when you're doing this kind of freehand. As I move my way around the model, just make sure to keep applying these loose organic shapes in a diagonal direction. On the hood it required a little, because there's no diagonal on a complete wraparound like that. So you can bring those shapes back together and have them touch. That's not a big deal. You just don't want any straight across, left to right, or up and down striations, because I just don't think those come off as camouflage very much. To get these organic shapes, you want to make sure that it goes thin and then gets wide. Occasionally, you see I've got those little like branches sticking off of them. Variation is key. You just kind of want to keep the direction the same and the flow the same, I guess is the best way to say it. You see there's a direction to it. It's not just floating blobs on his cloak, right? That diagonal direction is what's going to give the impression of camouflage. Okay, now we move on to Anthracite Gray. And we begin to put in shapes alongside these existing shapes to start to create a pattern. Most of these shapes, we're going to keep touching the green that we've already got there. We want to kind of make it look like it's going underneath. So we'll butt those shapes, those irregular shapes, right up to the edges of the Ardennes green shape right next to it. It would be fair to say that when we create these gray shapes, we're basically attaching them to the shape that already exists. You see, I take a lot of those irregular places. Now, we're also not limited by the green shape. Remember, we can paint right over it. Keep your paint nice and thin so that if you do go over an existing shape, you don't create texture with that paint. That will ruin the effect. You want to keep all your paint nice and flat so that you know, when you look up on these shapes, they don't literally overlap one another. A key factor here, I think the main takeaway is that when you put these secondary color splotches next to those originals, you definitely want them to touch. You don't want any white, little thin white spaces in between. That will definitely ruin the camouflage effect. Once we've made our way around the figure with the anthracite gray, now we can begin with the brown leather. The brown leather, it kind of gives us our wood, twigs, you know, tree bark element into the camo. So we kind of want to keep it thin, like wispy little branches. Again, though, we are attaching all of these to existing shapes. They're not floating in the white, unattached to anything. They're always riding along the edges of the green or gray shapes. They can jut out on their own, but the primary bulk of them stays attached to the existing colors. And you want to keep it sporadic. You want little flecks of it here and there. This is really kind of the fine detail part of the camo. I know in this video it looks like I'm ham-fisting this model pretty badly all over the place. This is a sped up recording, and like when I rotate the figure and it looks like I'm grabbing on all over it, those are some extremely light, gentle touches that you're seeing. They just look kind of like I'm slapping the figure around when the recording is sped up. What I'm doing now is mixed up a little brown leather and misty gray, about a 50-50 mix, and I'm just throwing a little bit of that into the middle of some of the brown shapes where there's enough width to capture it. This is just to add a little bit of dimension to our pattern. The brown leather is really rich and it's a great tone of brown, but we don't want it to dominate, so that's where this comes in too. It helps keep it from being the primary color. And now I'm just giving the whole cloak kind of a once-over examination, make sure I like how the pattern's laying. That there aren't any little areas that might need some of those brown highlights still. Spot one right here. There you go. And here you have it, a winter camo cloak ready for infiltrating. I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons at Patreon that make these videos possible. And as always, if you would be so kind, please like and subscribe.